Hello and welcome to Buddha and the Coach, powered by Soul Performance Academy. I am your host, Dan Mickle. The Buddha and the Coach is a weekly vlog focused on looking at the teachings of the Buddha in a coaching light. And the Buddha and the Coach is proud to be sponsored by ICN Athletics. ICN Athletics make the extraordinary ordinary through adaptive beach volleyball. Everyone should have the opportunity to enjoy and excel at this sport, and ICN offers the program and education to make it normal for adaptive athletes to play on any court. Help them make beach volleyball a place for everybody. For more information or to make a donation to the 501c3, please visit icnathletics.com and they'll see you in the sand. And again, thank you to John and Dave and everyone at It's Called Normal Athletics for their continued support. Please make sure you check out their website and donate if possible, icnathletics.com. All right, we are on to lesson 13 of the Buddha. And this lesson is pretty straightforward, but I think there are some new things that maybe we can hit on a little bit. Lesson 13 was, the tongue is like a sharp knife. It may kill without drawing blood. And it's pretty, like I said, straightforward when we look at it. We know that our words have consequences and what we say have consequences. But what I want to look at today is, when do our words get us into trouble? Or when do we kind of go on that automatic pilot and we don't think about what we're saying? You know, when we're doing a pregame or a postgame or even in a meeting, we tend to really think out what we're going to say, right? You're trying to motivate your team, or you're trying to help your team bounce back after a hard loss. You put a lot of thought and time into those speeches relative to the rest of things. You may not sit there for hours and write out what you're going to say, but you probably put a little bit more time into those types of speaking situations than you do the normal day. What I want to talk about is, how much time and thought do we put into just our daily talk and speech, say during practice? How do we address our team? How do we address our fellow coaches? How do we address opposing coaches on a regular basis? And do we get caught in kind of an autopilot where we're not thinking about the words that we say during those situations? Because while we like to think that when we have maybe these one-on-one meetings with our players and we sit down with these players and have these talks, that those are lasting moments, that those players are going to really think about what we just said in this meeting or, said on this one-on-one. But the truth of the matter is, it's what we say in the moment that tends to stick with them. How we address them during a drill or how we address them during practice tends to stick with them just as long, if not longer. So have you given thought as to how you talk when you're presenting things? When you're teaching a new skill, or maybe you're trying to give feedback, or you're trying to correct a situation, what is your language and how are you presenting it to them? Because what we're finding is, this next generation, sometimes it can be tough to coach a little bit. They're taking correction as criticism, right? Sometimes we're just trying to fix a technique or a skill or a system, and the way we present it, they're taking it as basically an attack on them as the athlete. And a lot of it's because we haven't given much thought into how we're presenting it or how we're saying it. And I think that's the area that we really need to look at. I wish we weren't in that place, but it's like anything else. It's the evolution of how we're coaching, how we're giving feedback, and how we need to look at things. So maybe when you're doing your end of season recap and you're thinking about how it went and what you need to work on or what you need to change, it's easy to hit the big stuff, right? Your techniques, your tactical situations, your personnel, maybe your weightlifting program, all those things that go into your program. But I'm challenging you to give yourself a little time to think about how you're presenting what you want to your team. how you're presenting it to them as a group, how you're presenting it to them individually, and how you're interacting with them, as well as how you're interacting with the rest of your staff. Because that is also a big part of it. One of my master theses when I was going for my first master's degree was about background anger. And one of the side notes that I got while working on that topic was players get a lot, especially in the youth sports world. Not even just sports, youth, training, whether it's athletics or musical or art or whatever you might be working on. There's actually a lot of bleed over from background discussions and background anger. That's what the paper focused on was the background. Parents yelling at coaches or coaches and officials actually bled in and affected the players. And what I learned is that's not just an anger issue. That's just basic communications. That anything we talk, how we talk coach to coach, how we talk, coach to coach in our own program, or how we talk coach to coach, to another program, the players and the athletes hear that, and that also bleeds into how they deal with things and how they interpret things. So it's not just about how we speak to the players, but how do we speak everyone that's around the players, how we speak to parents, how we speak to administrators, all of that. And for me, I'm a very sarcastic person, and that's been really tough to change, but that's what I've been working on, because I started to realize that while the sarcasm worked for me, a lot of my players coming in didn't understand that, and they would take it completely different than I intended it. And whether or not, what the intentions are, it still has an effect. And I found that was just a distraction, and it was easier for me to correct how I dealt with it and how I spoke versus trying to explain to them, this is what I really mean. So again, I think that's on us a little bit as coaches to start to think about, how have we evolved as communicators? We go to all these seminars and we learn our craft and we learn our skills and we learn our sport. But do we, continue to educate and grow in those soft skills, especially communication? Now, I think when, Buddha gave this lesson, it was a little bit more pointed, about talking ill of people, in front of them or behind them and those consequences. And that's obvious. I mean, any coach should know that we have to be careful about how we say things in that sense, which is kind of why I wanted to take this different route and have us look at it. So again, when you are deciding to describe a new skill, or you're setting up a new drill or a new game, how much do you think about how you're presenting that in your words? Not how you set it up and demonstrate it or show it, but how. And then the other big one is, how are you giving feedback? We often think about what we're giving in the feedback, what we're trying to correct or what we're praising because they did well, but we don't think about how we're actually presenting it. How are we saying it? How are we showing it? How are we, giving it to them to receive? Because ultimately that's where the key is how they receive it. We can have the best intentions in the world with how we're describing something or saying something, but if they don't receive it in the way that we want, then we have that breakdown in the feedback loop. So there you have it, folks. Lesson 13 of the Buddha. The tongue is like a sharp knife. It may kill without drawing blood. And like I said, it was a bit abstract today trying to tie that into the coaching the way I wanted to, but it boils down to this. How are you presenting the information that you want your players, your fellow coaches, and even your opposing coaches to take what you're saying? How much time and effort do you think about, am I actually saying this correctly? Are we not getting the results because I'm not actually presenting it the way I want to? And I think that's the way we need to look at it. So again, thank you for checking out this episode. We would appreciate it if you would subscribe to this YouTube channel, and we would love to have some comments and likes and shares and all that stuff. But let's start this discussion and tell me, where are some of the areas that you struggle in when it comes to communication, specifically you to your team or you to your fellow staff? Where do you have some breakdowns? What have you changed that has worked? So let's open up this community and have discussion. Peace, much love, don't suck, and we will see you next week for lesson 14 on the Buddha and the Coach.